5 years between God Hates Us All and Christ Delusion for Slayer. 5 years was their longest gap between albums. Even after all of the difficulty that they had after Seasons in the Abyss, that was only a 4-year period between that and Divine Intervention. 5 years. 5 years for Christ Delusion. And in those 5 years, Slayer was able to, once again, create controversy. They created controversy not only with the cover of the album, which was kind of a crudely drawn picture of a dismembered Jesus Christ, and then, of course, with the song Jihad. They were able to do something here on this album, and I want everyone to be clear with this. I want everybody to be very crystal clear about this, regardless of what I say about this album, is that this type of thing that Slayer does at times really showcases why some folks that are in power shouldn't be. Why this whole concept here in 2015, which is even worse, of being too oversensitive about things, is present. But that being said, let's talk about the album. A lot of people, of course, will look at the song title Jihad and think that it's about the September 11th attacks, and you'd be absolutely correct. You'd be absolutely correct, because Jihad is a song that's all about the September 11th attacks from the eyes of one of the terrorists that are performing them. So now, all of a sudden, you can see why this was considered to be so controversial, considering everybody in America, for example, would want to have this done from the eyes of, oh, this is horrible, this is terrible, were you there when they did this to my buildings, whatever. But instead, it was from the other side. It was instead from the side of the enemy, which, of course, makes some people a little upset, which is kind of stupid, because it's really just a different perspective of the exact same event. The thrash metal that you hear has taken the anger from God Hates Us All and elevates it even further. Think about Eyes of the Insane, for example, or Skeleton Christ, Catalyst, or even going down into Black Serenade and Conspiracy. That's Conspiracy, not Conspiracy. Get your X-Files caps on, ladies and gents. And this is an album that takes the volume of just sheer hatefulness and just kind of elevates that even further. And that's actually part of its problem. Once again, this is an album where Slayer fans and Slayer, well, heavy metal fans, music fans, were starting to see that Slayer was doing the one thing, or they were not doing the one thing that they maybe needed to do the most, which was reinvent the wheel a bit. Slayer right now is letting their brutality really tell the tale. They were letting their thrash metal instincts tell the tale. But in reality, the one thing that they probably needed to do the most was to add a little bit more to the brew. Add a little bit more to what they offered with these albums. And the one thing that can be easily said is that the lyricism is, well, as far as a conceptual idea is concerned, they all have fairly decent ideas in mind. The execution is just where things get to be a little bit weak. Kerry King as a lyricist is very interesting. Is very interesting. Jihad and Eyes of the Insane, for example, though, are not Kerry King at all. That was Jeff Hammond and Tom Araya. But even with that being said, the lyricism is one that is almost purposefully derogatory. And most people will say that's just Slayer being Slayer. In fact, Tom Araya thought that Jihad was going to cause a huge, huge stink, which it probably should have in America, but it didn't. And for that very same reason, many people just thought it was just Slayer being Slayer. And really, whenever you get to that point where it no longer surprises people that you do things like that, it almost makes it feel, and it almost makes it sound like they think that you're doing nothing more but trying too hard. And at this point in time, it really seemed that way. Think about the cover of the album, think about some of the songs on the album, think about how direct they really were toward some of the events that were occurring right there in the real world. It seemed as though within the band trying to talk about reality, people thought that they were doing it purposefully in order to try to get a reaction, in order to try to further their own legend. It's almost like the individual that here in 2015 you talk about, who goes online and talks about their problems and makes things up, either that or makes things seem worse, or pokes evil with the stick. Pokes things with the stick just to be the center of attention for a little bit. That's what they thought it was. So it's no wonder that so many people, it's no wonder that so many music critics and fans really felt that this album, while it had some great musical property to it, just like its predecessor, God Hates Us All, still really did not do the one core thing that Slayer needed, which was to reinvent the wheel a little bit and reinvent their sound a little bit. After 5 years, a little bit more was really expected. For one, the guitar solos on this were absolutely furious. They were 100% fantastic, but it also showcased really that Paul Bostaph as a Skinsman was just, that was a great era. You know, Dave Lombardo was really able to keep up with this band, not to mention he's one of the original founding members, so he has a lot of that Slayer spirit within him, but Paul was just a better fit. Paul was just a better fit. Overall, this is an album that suffers from itself. It suffers from itself. It suffers from being more of the same from a band that really had a lot of potential. It suffers a lot from its own history, because no matter what the band sort of did at this stage of the game, it was always going to feel like they were just doing it to piss people off, either that or they were trying to recapture this or that. They were trying to recapture Rain in Blood, Seasons in the Abyss, Show No Mercy, Hell Awaits, blah, blah, blah. Might as well just say all the names of the old albums. They're trying to do this, bleh. This album's not terrible. I'll say that. But this album needed a little something more. This album needed to offer a little something different. 5 years wouldn't be how long we would have to wait for the next album. The second to last album in our Slayer discography marathon. World Painted Blood would actually fulfill in 4 years. No, 3. Math is hard. What we kind of wanted from Christ Illusion. But did they go far enough? We'll talk about it next.